See, this is one of these moments where these kind of things choke me up because this is why I do what I do. And when these kind of things happen, it reminds me that this is good. This is really good. And you make a difference in people's lives and you don't realize it.
This is Catalyst, the stories behind the people building a better York. Welcome to Catalyst. I'm Rebecca Hanlon of Our York Media. Coming up, we'll be chatting with Brenda Wintermyer of Just Brenda Art. We'll talk about how she turned down a job with a famous greeting card company, what led her to open her first studio in her 50s, and how an early vision of York came to be. Before we get into that, here's a quick story about 2 York College students making a difference in York, brought to you by our title sponsor, York College of Pennsylvania's Center for Community Engagement. We're here today with Rhiannon Harbaugh and Sydney Little, who are part of York College's Community Art Scholars Program. The program is most widely known for its fall art walk, showcasing the work of students from 10 different high schools exhibited throughout the city. The second piece of the program and why these 2 ladies are here today is because of a $20,000 scholarship, an investment that can catalyze an art career. Now, Sydney, you were the first to receive it, and Rhiannon is the most recent to be awarded and is an incoming freshman at York College. Rhiannon, when we spoke a little bit before, you talked about how you grew up in Red Lion. You didn't even know that York had such a support system for local artists until last year when you were discovering the different exhibits and galleries that York has. So how does that drive you to leave your own mark in York?
It drives me in the same way that somebody would want to make their family proud. I've grown up in York County my whole life, and I knew I wanted to make my mark with my art somewhere, but this is the perfect place since I've grown up here and want to make my York family proud.
That's exciting. And it's great that, York College is giving you that opportunity that you can not only learn about art in terms of a future career, but now you can contribute to York's growing art scene. Mm-hmm. York certainly has a big part of a cultural community. And Sydney, you had said previously that you had no intention of staying in York, but that the Community Art Scholar changed that for you. How do you hope that art does that for others as a means of showcasing what York has to offer?
Well, like you said, I had no intention of staying here, but the more that I do stay here, the more that I find to be prideful with, and that there's just so much that we can do, and not a lot of people know that there's so much opportunity in the city. They think that York is just such a small place in such a big world, and that there's nothing that can possibly be here. But in actuality, they're wrong. There's so much here that we can do, and there's just a whole world. You have to go out and find it yourself, which I feel like that's part of the fun of it, and it's part of the journey.
That's awesome. Thank you so much both for coming today and telling us a little bit about the arts program at York College. It's really exciting that you guys, in your own way, are contributing to York. You can check out the York Community Art Scholar exhibition and encourage a local high school student you may know to apply in coming years. This season of Catalyst is supported by Stock & Leader Attorneys at Law. At Stock & Leader, our attorneys provide more than legal advice. We provide first-to-know expertise and a client-centered service through a collaborative team approach. We're more than your lawyers. We're your complete resource for legal insight and your partner for a fast-paced, changing world. When decisions matter, Stock & Leader. And now it's time to meet our catalyst. We're thrilled to be sitting down with artist Brenda Wintermyer, who's best known for her colorful paintings of downtown York. If you've been to White Rose Bar and Grill, all those paintings around the dining room came from her imagination. And she was among a group of people who got First Fridays started downtown and has been in a number of studios around the city for the past 18 years. Today, her Just Brenda Art Studio is on North George Street above the Handsome Cab. Now, Brenda has lived in York County all of her life, grew up in Dover, but she hears quite frequently from her students that you don't seem like you're from York. Can you explain that to us?
Okay, well, I used to teach at the Art Institute and York College level, and some of my students would say, are you from this area? And I would say, yes, I'm a Yorkie. And they would say, well, you don't seem like you're from this area. And I thought about that, and like, why would they say that to me? And so I kind of figured out that it's because I live in a big world, I think, mentally and emotionally. So I reside in a small town, provincial town of Dover. That's where I reside. But I live, my husband and I, and my adult children, we live in a bigger world. And that's what makes you feel, that's what made the students feel that I wasn't from this area, because I maybe addressed a little differently. I spoke about things and culture and places and events and people in a different way. And so I took it as a compliment.
So you've said before that you were born with art.
Mm-hmm.
You liked to draw as a child. You were quickly labeled the class artist. And you later majored in illustration at York Academy of Arts.
Yes.
Yet when you had an opportunity to work for a famous greeting card company, you turned it down. Can you walk us through that story?
Sure, yes. We had some talent scouts that were actually Hallmark. The Hallmark company had talent scouts that came around, went all over the United States to art schools looking for gifted illustrators to hire. And I was one from this area. And I was so thrilled with that. That was really a feather in my cap as a senior in art school. And they wanted to send me out there to Kansas, and I didn't go. But I always thought of it as a nice compliment. It was a nice feather in my cap. I was always honored and very proud of that. Out of my class, I think there was 2 of us that got accepted to be a Hallmark illustrator. And so I was very proud of that. But I didn't go because I was dating a young man that became my husband, and we didn't have our sights on Kansas, and so I didn't go. And I don't know if I regret that. I think back about that. Do I regret not going? Do I? I mean, we could have both taken off and just went, but I was pretty much a homebody, to be honest with you, and not as much now, but back then I was young, and I grew up in a large family, and I was, going to Kansas City seemed like a faraway place for me.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's like, really, Brenda, get over it, But back then I was young, and I never went. I don't know how that would have changed my destiny. I'm not sure.
Sure.
I'm thinking it's probably good that I didn't go, because I'm really had a very successful art career, and I'm not sure that if that would have tainted me being out there, or kind of confined me, limited me in my pursuit of using my imagination and drawing. I don't know how restrictive they are with their artists.
Sure.
Or, so I'm sure there was some things that wouldn't have been good about it, but the adventure would have been great. And the Hallmark company is a good company, so I don't know. I go back and forth, but I never think about it until someone asks me about, like you asking me that, put me back in that time, and I'm thinking, gee, I did have an opportunity as a young person to do something pretty cool, and I didn't do it.
But still, you stayed in York.
Yeah.
You raised your children.
Right.
And I think
had 2 children.
I think people would be surprised to know, if they don't already, the remarkable things that you were able to have a hand in it, as an illustrator in your career. It may not have been for Hallmark,
Right.
but you did work for Wolfgang and Hershey and other notable companies. What were some of those projects that you ended up doing that people might not have known that you did?
Well, I did a lot of tins, decorative holiday tins for Wolfgang Candy. I was known as the tin lady at the printing presses, that printed my art on the tins. But So I did lots of tins for Wolfgang Candy. I did lots of tins for Hershey, and some Charles Chips tins. They were over in Lancaster back then, and they're closed up now. I think I do still see some Charles Chips. They're iconic original tin I see around every now and then. But I did some events for them, sporting event tins for them, and seasonal events. So I did a lot of tins, and what that means is I would do the illustration work on board, illustration board, and to a theme that they requested. So I always had specifications. So they wanted an Easter tin, they wanted a Christmas tin, they wanted it with elves, they wanted a Super Bowl tin, whatever it was. And I just did tons and tons of tins, and it was fun. I enjoyed it. It was fun to see the end result. The new tins come off out of the factory. So now I see them around in yard sales, and it's like, that's my tin. You better be asking a good price for that. But so I saved 2 tins of everything I've done.
Okay.
And for my children, because I have 2 kids. And so I thought someday, I have them all down in the basement, all protected in containers, because they are tin. And I'm just thinking, they can each have a tin. I've done so many of them. If they want them. If they don't want them, they can pass them on to their children or get rid of them.
What were some of you had worked freelance for a while?
Yeah, I did a lot of freelance work, and I did freelance work for a lot of the design studios, several of the design studios around York County, Harrisburg, Lancaster, where they would hire me as their illustrator, as a freelancer, and then as they needed projects, I would go into their studios, and they would have a studio set up for me there, a nice studio set up for me. And so I was like a freeloading freelancer, I called myself. I would just go in and I would do my projects, whatever they wanted me to do, and then I would leave. So some of those were Fosscraft. I worked with Fosscraft for about 12 years in their design department, the product design department. So again, just concept drawings and working with their designers there.
Awesome. If anyone hears background noise, we are recording in Market View Arts, and there are some other people in the building. So it's not haunted. There's no ghosts. There's just people downstairs. So Brenda, you had talked when we had talked previously, you were working toward what you called your North Star through all these projects that you were doing, the art that you were doing in your life. And it eventually led you to open up your art studio. Finally, in your early 50s.
Correct.
Was when that had happened.
Correct.
What fell into place for you that allowed that to happen?
Well, I was teaching at the college level at that time, and I was weaning myself away from my illustration clients, and all the while planning for my full-time painting career. And so I knew I had to wean off of my illustration clients, and a good way to do that would be to teach, because that gave me an income. And also, I really actually enjoyed teaching. It was a great experience for me. I taught a decade and made a lot of contacts. And so they're all pebbles. They're all stones that build your path. And so you meet a lot of people when you're teaching. You have colleagues that you work with, your other instructors, you have department heads, you have the deans, you have the presidents of the colleges. They all get to know you and believe in you, and they become your networking community. And so while I was teaching, I met a lot of people and made a lot of friends, and that led me into meeting my next stepping stone was opening up a gallery on Philadelphia Street, which would be my full-time gallery, my full-time painting studio upstairs with a gallery down below. And that happened through teaching at Bradley Academy, or the Art Institute. So the president of the Art Institute, Lauren Crow, encouraged me to call this gentleman's number. He put in my hand, he goes, please call this gentleman. He would like to have some private art classes when he retires from his profession. And I said, okay. And so I kept that little number, and I kept it for a couple months. I really didn't call. And then one day I decided to call, and it happened to be Bob Pullo, who I did not know, and which surprised him. And I said, when I called, I said to the receptionist or his secretary, I'd like to speak to Mr. Pullo. And she says, just, and she connected me to him, and we chatted, and he was surprised I didn't know who he was. And I said, well, I don't bank with your bank, so I don't know who you are, but I'm sure that, he goes, can you teach an executive how to draw? And I said, I'm sure I can teach an executive how to draw. And so he became one of my private students. So see, that's how that happens, that networking, all those little pebbles that are laid down before you. And you take those opportunities, and you see them as growing yourself, growing your career forward, and getting to know new people, and making new relationships and friendships. And in this case with Bob, he liked my teaching style so much, and that, he would come in and I would loosen up his tie and roll up his sleeves, and I said, he'd come in right off his office desk and office work, and I'd say, come on, Bob, you gotta lighten up. We're working with charcoal today. And I'd loosen his tie up, and and set up his easel. And he just liked the way I taught, and he liked the results of how he could draw. He was just so impressed. So one day he just said to me, Brenda, if you can teach me to draw, that's pretty incredible. I think we should go into business. And so he wanted to set up a business with me. He said he would be the financial partner. I would be the creative partner. And that's how that got started. And that was called City Art. And I named it City Art. We had a nice little place on Philadelphia Street. A lot of people that'll be listening to this might remember that place. I had it for about almost 5 years. And so that was how that moved into that. So then I moved out of my teaching career.
Okay.
Because I needed to be there full time.
Yeah.
As a painter and as a gallery owner, a curator. And also I had workshops upstairs, like a little school, so to speak, of workshops. And so having that for 5 years kind of set me up to move on to my next move, which was another studio, and then I went on my own. So Bob and I, we closed up our partnership, and we both agreed on that. We had it long enough, and it was great. It was fun. But it was time for me to move on. It was time for him to move on. And so I opened up my own studio, and that's where Just Brenda came.
Okay.
Because it was just me now. I wasn't representing. I had 40 artists on my roster for my gallery at City Art. So I was representing a lot of artists, and I was helping them with their careers and helping them move forward. And so when I moved to my next next studio, I was just like, well, I'm not representing anybody. I'm just representing me now. This is me. This is my North Star. That's when I got to my North Star. My North Star was when I became truly independent, had my own studio, and had no partnerships, no financial commitment to anybody. And I was just able to be my own person and be my own painter. That was my North Star. And have it sustainable. Yeah. Because it is sustainable. And so that's when I told you I was living my North Star. Yeah. But all those things added up to that. My printer, going back to my illustration days, my printing, all the printers that knew my name, and then interviewing for an illustration job at Bradley Academy because they needed an illustration instructor, and I was heavily into illustration, so that was another move forward. And then moving into the Art Institute, and then moving into York College, and then meeting Bob, and all those things just fall into place. And it's just being ready, being prepared when those opportunities come along to recognize them. Even though I didn't do that with Kansas, I wasn't ready then. Yeah, I wasn't ready. I wasn't secure enough with myself then. But as you grow as an artist, you become more independent, you become more secure, become more mature, and you become more brave. And Yeah.
The next point of your career, you kind of, when we had talked previously, you talked about, kind of that studio space and partnering with Bob Pulo, was a pivotal point for you, a pivotal stone for
Yeah,
you.
very pivotal. That was, as an artist and as anybody in any career, they all have pivotal moments. They all have pivotal times that push them upward and forward. And those pivotal moments usually involve other people and other people that network for you or help you or give you a break or whatever that is. And we don't do it alone.
Yeah.
We don't, I didn't become just Brenda now all on my own, even though my name's just Brenda. It really isn't about just Brenda. It really did, in all honesty, for me, from my personal experience in this small city of York, it really took a village for me, because I have had so many people along my pathway push me, hold me up, push me forward, give me opportunities, believe in me, encourage me, and that's a village. And it's still happening today. People continue to buy my art, to collect my art, and it's just those opportunities that are very important to understand and appreciate, and to give credit where credit's due.
Well, I know that we're kind of in your story leading up to what happened to be a big opportunity for you, which was the White Rose Commission.
Another one.
An opportunity
Absolutely.
that you maybe almost missed.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That was another pivotal. That was really critical. I mean, opening City Art with Bob Pulo was critical because it gave me credibility with Bob. Because he was a big man in the community and a good man and respected man. And so if he partnered up with me, she must be okay.
Yeah.
So that gave me credibility, because I was known, but in small circles.
Sure.
In the college circles and in the printing circles I was known, in the illustration circles I was known, but not so much outside of that. So Bob Pulo put me up to another plateau. And then the White Rose was another one, because now we're in the restaurant industry, the eating industry. And, he pulls, 1,000 people through there a week, maybe more. And so all those eyes are on that big commission that I did. I did 26 large paintings. They're 6 feet tall. They're about maybe 3.5 feet wide.
Wow.
And they're of a walking tour of downtown York. That's what Tom wanted. Tom Seibel, the owner of the White Rose Bar and Grill. So they're placed 6 inches apart, and they go the whole entire perimeter of the dining space in the back. So it's actually like a gallery back there. It's a gallery. It's a dining gallery is what it is, a fine art. Because then you have the bar, which is Pat Sell's work, that three-dimensional, all that work that articulates and moves and from old salvaged art. So it's like a gallery back in there. Yeah. So yeah, that was a pivotal point, because now I had a platform, and it was like I'm up on a wall of a very well used restaurant, an enjoyed restaurant. People sit there, and as they're waiting for their food or their drinks, they're looking around and they're looking at places that they recognize. Oh, I know where that is, or I know where that is. Oh, I like that one down there. Look at that one. And that's what they do. And it's like what it does. It was brilliant for Tom, because what that's doing to his patrons sitting there, it's elevating them to a different level. They're sitting in a dining space, looking at their city or a city they're visiting, and it's flushed with color. And he has each one lit with LED lighting, and it elevates them. It's like they're someplace very special. They're in like a gallery. It's very special, and a lot of people in this area don't even visit galleries, and so it makes them feel special. It elevates them, and if that owner of this restaurant puts that much detail and emphasis into his walls, his food must be really pretty darn good too. And so it's just that whole package. It's like he was brilliant.
What did that job do for you?
Well, it gave me exposure. I mean, it gave me a lot of stress doing it, because it's 26 large paintings and these 26 white canvases sitting around in my studio, and I sat and looked at them for about 3 weeks until I got started on them. But my specifications for that project was, Brenda, you do whatever you want. You can pick the buildings you want. I just want it to be downtown York.
Yeah.
You decide on the buildings and just do your style. So what it did for me was gave me anxiety because I had a deadline.
Mm-hmm.
So you have these big paintings that you have to be finished in when he wanted his opening of his dining area. And so I got a little bit, some anxiety with that because it was a lot of work. And I think I told you before, I was up to number 17, maybe 18, and I had a little bit of an anxiety thing going on. I'm thinking, what if I can't do anymore? I still have 7 more to do. What if I just don't want to do anymore? What if I'm just tired, I'm burned out? What will happen, because that emotion of mine will reflect on the canvas, and then the art's going to start changing.
Oh, wow.
And I was nervous about that. So I stopped and we went to Italy for 2 weeks. And when I came back, I was all fresh and revived and filled with art and the appreciation of art. And I finished the last 7 or 8, and I enjoyed it up to the very last one. And so I was thankful for that break. And I met my deadline, which I always do. I met my deadline, and Tom was pleased with him, and we had him hung. And what that did for me, it gave me a big springboard for my career.
That's awesome.
Because people actually know my art, they don't know me.
Right, they see it.
So I have people every week walk into my current studio, and they'll walk in, and the first thing they see, they look around, they look on my walls, and they go, Are you the artist? And I finished the sentence for them. That's hanging at the White Rose. Yeah. Are you that Brenda? I went, yeah, that's me. They went, wow, it's so nice to meet you. I mean, they know my art, which, by the way, is the biggest compliment you can give an artist, any artist, a dancer, a musician, composer, anybody that makes something, that they recognize your product.
Yeah.
They don't know you, but they know your product. And so to me, that's a high compliment.
Yeah. So that was like 2006 you had done that job. Rewinding a little bit to another piece that you had done that I think to us we've seen, but when we heard the story behind it, it was just particularly fascinating, is your Twilight piece. And looking at North Beaver Street at Twilight 17 years later from when you had first created it. Tell us about that particular work and why it's so important today.
That piece was inspired by our economic development director back then. His name was Matthew Jackson. And he was a friend of mine, and he came to me one day, and he said he was an appreciator of arts, of fine arts. And he goes, Brenda, I would like for you to illustrate what you feel your vision of Beaver Street would look like, your vision of what it would look like in 10 years when it comes to fruition. Because we talked about, Matt and I would talk about so many times, what if this? What if the Central Market House was lit up from underneath at night and it would shine, the towers would shine? What if this? What if that? What if there was flower carts out? What if there was the street became a pedestrian street and the macadam was removed and the fire bricks would be exposed? And what if? He goes, let's take those what ifs and you make a painting of it. And then I'll use it as my poster, campaign poster to the city government and the funders and the people that will help promote this. I'll use your painting. So I said, okay. So it was more like an illustration because, again, I was coming right off my illustration years.
Okay.
And I did this painting of what if Beaver Street. And I called it North Beaver Street at Twilight because it's a night scene. And it was a hit right off the bat. It was very popular, and it gave everybody a vision of this is what Beaver Street can look like. And guess what? It is that now. It became that. Everything happened that was on my painting, except that the fire brick was not removed. The macadam was not removed on that one block to expose the fire brick. Maybe someday that'll happen, and it will become a pedestrian block, maybe.
I think one of the fascinating things is, you painted this scene of Beaver Street as to what you wanted it to be, and at the time that was, it was there were people there and that wasn't a common thing. Now it's almost like you didn't have enough people.
Yeah, now it looks like sparse. Yeah, I mean, we have, like on our first Friday, we have a couple thousand people downtown. And when I put the people in the painting, you know, I put people in that I thought was a lot because let me tell you, when we started our first Fridays, you know, 50 people.
Yeah.
We had 50 people. And we thought that was like, yeah, we got 50 people walking on sidewalks. This is so great. And all 50 people pretty much ended up in my studio. Because I was like the only art studio downtown. I mean, there were shops, little shops, you know, boutiques and restaurants, but there were no other art studios, working artist studios downtown, except me. And everyone would just gather to me because that's really what First Friday's supposed to be. It's supposed to be celebrating the arts and culture and the little boutique shops, but also the art shops. If there weren't any, so they all hang out at my place. So that's how it kind of started.
Yeah. I think that's a fascinating scene of what, you hoped that York would become and what I think in a way it very much has become. But one thing is with that particular piece, you put an artist on the sidewalk.
I did.
And that was you.
I put a couple artists. I have a guy walking with his easel and his beret, and I have me outside of a little merchant shop there on the corner, and I have my little baseball cap on, and I'm at an easel because that's what I did back then.
Yeah.
I don't do that as much now, but I used to sit out on the sidewalk all the time and paint, and people would stop and talk to me. And there was a reason I did that. Yes, did I love to sit out and paint? Yes, of course, I was a painter. But it was also to promote downtown, promote the culture, elevate people. It's all about elevating people, and it's all about perception. And when people walk by and see a painter sitting out painting, what's that message that those pedestrians are getting? What do you think they're realizing there? What do they feel? What would you feel? If you were in a little town and you're walking by and there's an artist outside painting on a sidewalk, what would you feel? You would feel like, I'm someplace kind of special. This is really cool.
Yeah.
This is a cool little town. There's artists outside painting. And honestly, that's one of the big reasons why I did it, because I could have easily painted inside. But I wanted people to realize York is something unique. It's authentic. It's not fabricated. It's not made up. This is who we are. This is what we are. We're real. We're organic. I'm an artist. I have a studio right up the street. I'm out here painting because this is what I do for a living. This is my life, and I'm making a living on it. I'm not pretending. This is who I am, and I think that's what all the shops are downtown. They're all mom and pops, and they're all like making a living on doing something they know how to do and something they love. And if they can make ends meet and pay their bills, they feel like they're doing something for the good of the community. So I got to get out there and paint again maybe in the fall when it's not so hot. It was so hot this summer.
Yeah.
It's kind of hard to paint, but
yeah. Well, Brenda, thank you so much for stopping by to share your story with us. People can find your studio in Handsome Cab on the second floor.
On the second floor, which was another pivotal point, by the way.
Yeah.
I don't want to undermine that, because that was another pivotal move for my career, and I knew it would be. That's why I moved my studio. Plus, I believed in the two gentlemen that were opening this Handsome Cab. I believed in them with all my heart that they could make this work, and I knew it would be good for my career. And it has been. It's been excellent.
So people can have a glass of wine and go admire your work.
They do it all the time. They do it all the time. And can I tell you one little thing before we close up? Because I know you're probably on time. I had we're having some remodeling done in our home right now, and there's this young man that's helping our handyman, and he was in my studio. He was in my house, and he goes, "Brenda, I have to tell you, I was in your studio some time ago. I don't know this guy. I don't remember him. He's just a young carpenter in his 20s. He goes, I was in your studio. And he goes, I really liked your studio. I said, oh, you were in my studio? He goes, yeah, several years ago. And he goes, look. And he reaches back in his pocket. See, this is one of these moments where these kind of things choke me up, because this is why I do what I do. And when these kind of things happen, it reminds me that this is good. This is really good. And you make a difference in people's lives and you don't realize it. So he reaches back in his wallet and he pulls out my business card. And it was tattered. The corners were all curled up. It was torn. It was dirty from carpentry work. And I said, "You have my business card?" He goes, "Yeah, I carry it with me." He said, "I really like it." And I thought, oh my goodness, this young man kept that business card, and it's so dirty. But he wants it, because you know what it does for him? It reminds him where he was. He was in this studio, and he liked my studio, and it elevated him. He was at a special, to him, I take it for granted, but to him, he was in a special place. And he had a special moment, and he got to meet the artist. And he remembered me, and I must have had good conversation with him, and it elevated him to a sense where he felt good about his life and himself, and he would never wanted to forget that, and he kept that little card. So it was just so heartwarming for me, and this just happened like yesterday, and I'm thinking, wow, this is what makes my life and my career worthwhile and meaningful to me. So today, it was his last day on the job today, this morning, and when I left, I gave him a new card.
Oh, wow.
I said, "You might want a new card, but keep that old one because I think that one's special to you. But just in case you want a new one." And he just gave me this big smile. He goes, "Oh, thank you, Brenda."
That's so funny.
But it's those things.
Yeah.
It's all about the people and the community and elevating people, educating people, making people feel good about themselves and where they live. It's perception. And when people do believe that, this is where the magic happens. When they feel good about themselves and they feel good about their community and their town they live in, then it becomes it because they believe in it. And then that's the magic. Then it becomes it. And that's what I'm the soldier for that. It's my mission.
That's incredible. Well, it's great he's got a new card, but I think the old one has more story behind it.
Yeah. I don't think he's going to get rid of that old one.
No.
He should laminate it.
Oh, there you go. Oh. Well, Brenda, thank you so much for your time and for telling us more about your story and background, and hopefully people come and visit you and have a very similar experience as to what he did.
Thank you for inviting me to be part of your program. I appreciate it. I'm very honored.
Oh, good. Thank you.
Thank you.
If you want to check out more episodes of Catalyst, visit ouryorkmedia.com/catalyst for show notes and more. Thanks so much for listening. Please subscribe at Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts, and bonus points for leaving a review. This project was funded in part by the York Social Venture Challenge grant from the York County Community Foundation. Our title sponsor is York College of Pennsylvania's Center for Community Engagement, with support from Stock and Leader Attorneys at Law. This show is produced by Will Hanlon and Caleb Robertson. I'm Rebecca Hanlon, and you've been listening to Catalyst from Our York Media.